Hi, I'm Mike Naziri, and I'm here with Troy Rand. And Troy Rand has a PhD in biomechanics. He's a certified strength and conditioning specialist at Spartan SGX. He's a coach there, and I have no idea what a PhD in mechanics is. Does that mean you can fix cars? Like you're a PhD in fixing cars?
No, so mechanics of the human body. So, like I was explaining to you a little bit ago about the lever arm of the strict curl. So we look at forces and motion and stuff like that. So looking at how the body moves and the forces involved with the movement.
Okay, so we'll get into that, I guess, further into the podcast. I guess as we go along, you can
Yep.
some stuff. What type of lifting do you compete in? Any sort of strength lifting?
So throughout my life, I've done a bunch of different stuff. I've always been, like I mentioned to you before, recreational at best. I compete to have fun. I have done a couple of powerlifting meets in the Raw Federation. That was back probably about 10 years ago. I used to do a lot of CrossFit coaching. So I got into a lot of Olympic lifting with that. I never competed in Olympic lifting. CrossFit competitions have always been just local, like, gym competition, things like that. And then got into, like, I did a lot of endurance sports. So I did a lot of marathons, ultra marathons, and even did a half and a full Ironman.
Ooh, ultra
Um,
marathons.
yeah, I've done 350 milers, 250 Ks, which is 31 miles, and then about 14 full marathons.
Wow,
Yeah.
that, those are crazy. I don't even want to think
Yeah, and
walking.
that's kind of what got me directed towards Spartan. Is like the long distance running for me just gets boring. Like it's just the repetitive over and over. Some of the ultras you get out on the trails and it's kind of nice because you get like into mountains and stuff where there's a lot of terrain that keeps your brain active and stuff. But like just road marathons and stuff, they just get boring for me.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, like I got into college with a swimming scholarship, and I never found it boring until I became a lifeguard on Coney Island and on the ocean, and we would swim 6 miles and not hit a wall. You know what I
Right.
mean? Just
Yeah.
one tip from the Coney Island to the other tip, and after that, in the fall, you get into the pool, and it was just like, oh, here's a wall, here's a wall, here's a wall.
Right.
It would kind of be annoying.
Yeah, I did a half marathon last year that was just on the road. And even a half marathon, I was like so bored, like, half hour in, I'm like, okay, this is just the same thing over and over and over.
Um, ooh, the PhD in biomechanics. So I was married to my wife just after she got her bachelor's degree. We both graduated at the same time, and after that, I was done with school, and so I started working. I was became a police officer, and but it as she got into it, her master's degree, and I mean, like her dissertation and stuff like that. I mean, I remember, I remember one day on the weekend. Well, my weekend at work was like whatever day I was having to rotate to be off, and
right.
she had to stay home to do work, and I went out on my motorcycle, and she was crying because she couldn't go out and do stuff. It was just, it's so intense getting a PhD, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, the level of work is astronomically different from like the undergrad level to the master's and the PhD. It's just, yeah, it's a lot of work. I'm one of those people though that I tend to do things kind of all in. So like when I went to school, I was like, well, I'm going to become a doctor,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, it's intense. I remember, and then what do you call that at the end of the PhD? Um,
you have your dissertation is your
yeah,
big thing. You have your comps and your dissertation.
yeah, the comps. Yeah, the comps. What I was thinking about. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, she had to read almost like every book in the world.
Yeah.
She had to know like so much. I would never be able. I would never be able to do it ever.
Yeah.
Anyone who's got a PhD, I'm just like, So super.
Yeah, for our comps, we didn't do like the test. Instead, we had to write like a mock, what's called an R01 grant for the NIH, which is like the big 12-page research plan grant that you would submit to the National Institutes of Health, which is like the big government organization that funds science. But I had to do this whole application, which is enormous with all the supporting documents and stuff. And then I had to get up in front of my committee and present my grant and then defend it like if they were a grant review panel, which was a nightmare also.
All right, so let's talk about the strict curl, because that's what when you got on the camera with me, I was just wrapping up and
Yeah.
mentioning my elbows flaring out instead of staying in. And I was staying in up until yesterday when I talked to Bruce Knox, who owns Knox Power Company, Jim. And, you know, he showed me that if you keep your shoulders down, come up, rotate in, and you rock back, that you're using, I don't know, it's a lot of different muscles other than just the bicep. And I guess it's also a different lever.
Yeah, so I mean, the muscles that you're using is important also. So there's a lot of things at play here, but yeah, you're engaging more musculature. So different muscles can help out. But then from a purely mechanical standpoint, you can look at the lever arm. And so, you know, what I was saying, like, for example, if I'm just like this with my bicep, you know, you can look at this distance and, you know, if we just say this is a 1 foot distance, I'm lifting 100 pounds, then we have 100 foot-pounds of torque that we have to produce to move that weight. Now, if I rotate and bring that lever arm to where it's now shorter, then let's say we reduce it by just 2 inches or something like that, then we're reducing, you know, almost 20%, about 18% of that torque that we need to overcome.
I'm studying for my personal trainer at NASM, and I know a fancy word, right? Is it making it like sagittal?
Yep.
That's it, right?
Yeah, so that's in the sagittal plane. That's a movement in the sagittal plane. What you're doing is you're changing some of the planes that you're moving in a little bit. So you're making it not a purely sagittal plane movement. Yeah.
I know. You have no idea. I think for most people, it's not that difficult. For me, it's really difficult to memorize.
Yeah. So if you are new to it, it's going to be difficult. If you're someone like me who went through undergrad in exercise science, master's in exercise science, PhD in exercise science, all with emphasis in like sports psych, you know, biomechanics, stuff like that, it becomes so second nature, you know.
I have a degree in economics, and then I became a police officer. So this is like rocket science.
Right.
And like, it's frustrating because I know all this stuff, most of it. And they're like, I'm like, why is the calf muscle called like a gastro something or other?
Gastrocnemius.
Why can't they just call it a calf muscle?
A lot of it stems back to like when they named them, like it was, you know, using like Greek words or whatnot, you know, where it was named and stuff like that. I think it's actually a lot of Latin in the musculature anatomy.
I would never guess that like one of like some of the calf muscles start with gastro. I would think that would be like by your glutes.
Right. Yeah, actually, kind of an aside. I was listening to a couple of your podcasts last week,
and didn't have me talking about CrossFit, did you?
I heard you mention CrossFit in one, but I think you said something about like I'm not going to talk bad about CrossFit because someone that was on was like a previous CrossFit or something. I honestly, it's not going to offend me. So
I'm just joking around. I like that. I always ask people. I don't ask them, what do you think about CrossFit? I ask people, why do you hate CrossFit?
Right. Yeah.
People hang like, and they're usually like stunned and
yeah,
it's just a joke.
Yeah. But I heard you guys talking about rating of perceived exertion.
Yeah.
And you had brought up the 6 to 20 scale.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't know why it was 6 to 20. Yeah. So just a little tidbit is the reason it's 6 to 20 is that actually should equate to your heart rate if you multiply it by 10. So a rating of perceived exertion of 6 is resting at about a 60 beats per minute heart rate. Okay. A rating of perceived exertion of 20 would be 200, which is like basically a maximal heart rate.
Okay.
I think they switched away from that because that's not really how it ended up being. You know, people are at like 120 and saying I'm at an 18. because
Yeah.
people think they're working harder than they are. But I just heard that, and
Yeah. That whole well, I think maybe that's useful for somebody that hasn't been in lifting for a long time and they're become a trainer. But like if you've been lifting and you've been training with people or helping people train, like you can see
right.
where people are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, equating the RPE to like a heart rate, that's only effective in like cardiovascular exercise. So
Yeah.
that wouldn't apply to lifting at all. You know
Oh,
what I mean? Because you're not getting your heart rate up to 200 when you're lifting. That would be like if you were running.
okay. Well, let's talk about getting your heart rate up to 200 while lifting. Yeah, and let's see.
Oh, so you do want to talk about CrossFit?
Yeah. Well, no. You're gonna like this. Well, I guess maybe you're not a biology person. But you probably know a lot about it. So the last competition I went to, right before I'm like a couple of weeks out before a competition, I'm taking like 4 scoops of pre-workout, right? Like, no, 4 times like the recommended dosage, but I'm 4 times the man of the average man. And so, I train, 1 lift a day, my squat, my bench, my deadlift. I don't train both on the same day. And so now you go into a competition, you got 3 lifts, right? So I need 12 scoops of pre-workout.
Right, 4 for each lift, 3 lifts, 4 times the man. I got it. The math makes sense.
That makes sense, right? So I big 12 scoops in one bottle. I drink about a third of it before the squat, a third of it before the bench, a third of it before the deadlift. And right about my third deadlift, I started to turn purple. And I felt like my skin was like cooking, and thankfully I didn't have a heart attack. I didn't really, but so I felt like my skin was burning from the inside. You can explain that?
Well, I'm guessing your pre-workout has beta alanine in it, which is what gives you like the tingles.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know the mechanisms behind it, but beta alanine is known to give the tingles, and it has to do with like the blood flow and stuff. So you probably essentially were overdosing on beta alanine.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's like how that actually affects you, but
I promised my wife I would go maximum 6 scoops competition.
I mean, you've experienced 12, you're not going to die, so 6 is probably a good, limit.
Well, okay, here's a big argument. Well, pretty big argument I had with my soon-to-be brother-in-law, because he's I always joke around. I say he's got a degree in gym. I don't know. He's a gym teacher.
Yeah.
He doesn't like when I say he's got a degree in gym. But so I was making the point that, well, when I take pre-workout, my heart rate goes up for a while. And well, when you do cardiovascular exercise, right, you're getting your heart rate up, and that's burning calories. So can't I just take pre-workout and watch TV?
Yeah, just take pre-workout, sit on the couch, your heart rate's up, you're getting your cardio.
Yeah.
Makes perfect logical sense.
It makes sense to me. I don't know.
Have you ever seen Terry Crews has a little skit he does on YouTube called Jerome Mayberry's Rules of the Weight Room?
No.
It's a 2-piece thing, and it's like 5 rules in each one, so it's like 10 rules. But one of his, Terry Crews is, right? So he does Jerome Mayberry's, and one of them is smoking and cardio. So he's on the treadmill with a cigarette in his mouth, and he's running. And he's like, you got to stress them capillaries. You got to make them work. If you smoke, make the capillaries work, they're going to grow bigger, right? They're going to grow stronger.
That's a good point.
Reminds me of that kind of mentality.
I'm going to have to bring that up next Thanksgiving.
Yeah, pull it up. It's pretty funny.
Your job, right? PhD in biomechanics. What do you do with that? How do you work with that?
Well, so my initial plan was to go on to be a professor at a university and to teach exercise science, biomechanics to students. That kind of got sidetracked when I was graduating. It's a long story; it could be almost its own podcast. But I had a young son who got diagnosed with a really rare bone disease, and I ended up finding a job at a clinic that specialized in this rare disease.
What's it called?
It's called it's called multiple hereditary exostosis. However, we end up finding out that it turns out it's actually an even more rare disease that has similarities to that, which we didn't find out for 3 years of working in this clinic. And then I also found out that I also have it, and I'm the one that passed it on to him. And it's a genetic thing.
Yeah.
The outcome from the new disease, metachondromatosis, is actually way better than the outcomes from MHE. So it's actually a good thing that his disease is not exactly what we thought it was. But right when I was graduating was when he got his diagnosis, and I found this clinic in West Palm Beach. I was up in Omaha, Nebraska, doing my PhD. Found this clinic in West Palm that specializes in this rare disease. They needed someone to run a drug trial that was actually investigating a drug designed for his disease. So I moved down to West Palm to take a job in clinical research, testing out this medication. Now, 3 years later, that trial is ended. I was on contract with the drug company. They've kept me on currently. I'm just doing clinical science for them. So I look at they do a lot of rare bone diseases in children. So I work with orthopedic surgeons right now, just doing basic science, looking at pre-post surgery type things. That being said, I also work on the side as like a fitness trainer. So I coach a couple days a week at an outdoor fitness facility, and then I do some like personal training, nutrition coaching type stuff, and the Spartan training stuff. And I'm just starting to get more into that. So I don't know what the near future brings, but with biomechanics, a PhD generally leads into being a professor, doing research and teaching. But then besides that, the strength and conditioning world is full of biomechanics, analyzing movement. So we do all the 3D analysis with like putting markers on people and then having them do a movement with high-speed cameras, breaking that down and trying to tweak their form, to do better movements. So there's a lot of fields you can go into with biomechanics.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, my wife's plan was to become an English professor, and then there was nothing but adjunct jobs. So
yeah,
now she's a high school teacher. She likes it better. She's making more money, and she's going to get a pension, great pension, and everything. It worked out better to just get out of that field.
Yeah, I'm one of those. I definitely believe like you got to just kind of direct your life, but then if things don't go exactly how your goals were set, you have to be adjustable. So like, I had this goal for almost 10 years of going and being a professor and staying in university. That all shifted, but it's all for the better, and now I'm committed to staying where I'm at in South Florida. I'm in the West Palm Beach area. I'm in Lake Worth Beach. I'm buying a house here. I have 2 young kids. I want them to grow up with some stability, which is something I didn't have growing up. And so I've looked around at like professor positions, and there's not a ton in the area, but I'm really happy doing like the training, and so I'm looking into just doing the fitness business type of thing, also.
What I'm sorry. That's that's my creatine clock.
You got to have the creatine clock.
I know. Now I can't forget. I'm gonna have to remember later. You said you had a kid while you were doing your PhD.
Did what?
You had a kid while you were doing your PhD?
Yeah. So actually, I had 2. So my first kid was born the first semester. Actually, I think I was 1 year into my PhD when my first kid was born. Yeah. I did 5 years for my PhD, 2 years for my master's. So I did them at the same lab. So I had 7 straight years at the school. But I was 1 year into the PhD when my first kid was born, and then basically like 3 years in when my second kid was born.
Yeah.
That was really tough. Yeah.
Yeah. The bone disease, what does that do to you?
So he grows. They're benign tumors that grow off of his bones.
Yeah.
And so the MHE, you get benign tumors that grow mostly out of the growth plates.
Yeah.
The one he has, it grows out of the growth plates, but he also gets them just on the bones where you get these little tumors. They can be problematic because sometimes they'll get in the way of like blood vessels or tendons, or like a tendon will rub across one, cause problems. The disease we thought he had, MHE, also comes along with like the forearms will bow, sometimes elbows will dislocate, short stature, unequal leg length, so they have to have all these operations. But now that he's been re-diagnosed, we know this one's much less severe as far as there's no real bone deformities, it's just the growths.
Yeah.
And a lot of those go away as an adult. So like I lived with it my whole life and didn't know I had it. You know, and actually a lot of people in my family we've realized had this. And we never knew we had it. So I'm now confident my kid probably won't even need a surgery growing up. I thought he's going to need at least a couple surgeries. But yeah, so it's been a really kind of wild ride from, you know, this was when I was finishing up my PhD. He got diagnosed. I moved down here and actually finished my PhD from down here. So I was working in the day, finishing up my dissertation at night, and then I flew back to Omaha to defend my dissertation, you know, and then came back. So I did my last 6 months of my PhD from Florida. Yeah.
Yeah. Your training method. So you went from, you did ultra marathons, you did Spartans, you did powerlifting. Would you say your training was similar between all three of them? Did you train in progressions for all three of them? How did you train?
Yeah, so my training, it's varied quite a bit over time. So like when I first like got really back into the fitness realm, I'd say, like let's say when I was training for my marathon stuff, when I first started, it was mostly just running. You know, I do some body weight exercise. I've also done a lot of martial arts most of my life, so I do a lot of the body weight exercise stuff. But it was mostly running a traditional endurance progression. I would do my 16-week marathon training with progressive overload or running farther each week. I did that for quite a while, but then I always liked lifting. And so then there's kind of this dichotomy between endurance or strength. That's around the time that I found like CrossFit and saw these people that were kind of combining the two. I actually found CrossFit really early on. 2009, I think, was when I first started. And it's actually kind of funny. I was reading a parkour website, and just because I was like, oh, this parkour stuff's really cool. And I was like looking at parkour, and they had a link to CrossFit, and they said, this is what we use to train. I looked at it, I was like, oh, this is really neat, and there was no gyms in my area. So I just did it out of my bedroom in my apartment. And then a gym opened up and I started going there and everything. Then I started doing CrossFit real heavy while I was still into all the marathons and ultras and stuff. And so then I started kind of adopting more of, at the time there was a group called CrossFit Endurance that, did this marathon training where you didn't really run long distance and you incorporated really intense weightlifting and CrossFit training into your program. So then I kind of followed that model, and it worked really well where the training was really hard, but I was doing like one of my 50 milers I did, I had 14 weeks of training program I have written out where I ran a total of 140 miles. So we're talking an average of 10 miles a week. And that includes every 400 I did in CrossFit as part of a workout.
Yeah.
So I had no real long runs. I had, like a 10, 15 miler once or twice. And then I had a couple of marathons right at the end leading up to the 50 miler. But I was doing Olympic weightlifting separate from CrossFit. And then I was doing CrossFit and then my endurance training. My endurance training was mostly like threshold type training or intervals. So doing a lot of the 4, 800, 1 mile repeats, and then doing like the 5 or 6 mile, like, max pace type runs. So my training's changed a lot over the years. When I was into powerlifting, like when I did powerlifting meets, I did focus more on just doing my squat, bench, deads. I like that type of training also, and I will incorporate a lot of that into my training typically. Like right now I haven't been, but like even 6 months ago, I had a progression of squat, bench, deadlift, plus all the accessories. Then I would do some endurance, some different cardio type stuff and conditioning stuff on top of that. This year, I started getting more towards like the Spartan training. But again, it's not really any different. I'm just incorporating more of the Spartan specific movements. So just things like making sure I'm climbing rope. They have some specific movements in Spartan, like the bucket carry. Nothing more than a 5-gallon bucket from Home Depot, fill it up with something and find different ways to run with it to be efficient. I do like regular strength training, regular endurance training, and then also mixing it up into like a conditioning format.
Okay, so biomechanics. So I really have a good question for you for biomechanics.
Okay.
So why can I lift more weight with crappier deadlift form than with good deadlift form?
Well, I think so for example, I mean, things like with deadlift, for example, sometimes your back might just not have the strength to maintain a good posture with as much weight as you can pull. So like when you're not gonna be able to maintain the back, but if you let the back go a little bit, you can still stand up with it.
Right.
I mean, that's very common.
So that's the problem.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's very common. And I don't know if there's any better explanation than that, but
I mean, yeah, that explains it. What do you think is the main muscle there to stop that back from rounding? Is it the erectors?
Yeah, I mean, your erectors and your lats engage a lot in the deadlift too. They can help a lot with that, keeping the shoulders back. But as far as the spine itself, that's erectors or the spinal, extensors. And the thing too with the deadlift with the rounded back is everyone's anatomy is slightly different, and so you can't just look at like flat back versus rounded, but sometimes what you want to look for is during the movement, is there active rounding? And that's what you want to avoid. So if you brace yourself, even if you do have a little rounding of the back, but you're like that at the beginning and you do your deadlift and you stay like that throughout, that's fine. Especially in the upper back with thoracic, you'll see that sometimes.
All right, but if you start like this, like a fruit roll up, and then unroll yourself, right? You don't want to do that.
Yeah, you don't want to see the movement during the lift. Yeah. But if there's slight rounding to start with, and you maintain that, it's that flexion extension of the spine during the movement that is that you don't want to do.
Yeah, you use the fancy words, flexion. I call it the fruit roll up.
Right. Yeah. Same thing.
Have you ever coached anyone?
So I mean, I've coached. I coached CrossFit for a couple of years. I did coach some endurance training also. I've coached, like marathon training, stuff like that. And then I've coached. Right now, I do some lifting coaching at like an outdoor boot camp kind of fitness place. Yeah. And then I've done personal training, which is one-on-one coaching. So I've done a number of different coaching situations.
It's awesome, right, to see people do well.
What's that?
It's an awesome feeling, right?
Yeah, it really is. I love seeing people progress, and like the boot camp place I coach, we'll see new members come in, and like it's great to see them like 2 months later, just like hitting new PRs and like just being in better shape than they've been, and seeing people finish their first marathon and whatnot.
Why do you think CrossFit is not scary for new people to come into the gym and do? Because I think powerlifting and Olympic lifting, it seems that now people come from the realm of CrossFit, and then they, some of them move to powerlifting, a few of them move to Olympic lifting solely, but like they're not coming straight to powerlifting.
Right. Well, I think for one thing, CrossFit's just got a lot more exposure because it exploded so much and it's become a lot more of a household name.
Yeah.
So I think like people just are aware of CrossFit more. but like especially back like 2009, 2010, early, teens, whatever, CrossFit wasn't well known. And, like I'd never meet someone who knew what CrossFit was.
Yeah.
Now most people do. So I think more than anything, it's an exposure thing, because back then people were scared to come into a CrossFit gym.
Right.
I think now you have a lot more CrossFit gyms that look a lot nicer, as opposed to back in the day, they were more of what you'd think of your dingy powerlifting gym. That was also your CrossFit gym.
We make powerlifting gyms like painted pink.
Yeah. Right. And so I think some of it's just the exposure, because again, I think CrossFit, people were scared to come into it. CrossFit really tried to overcome that by pushing this narrative that it's scalable to everyone, which is true. It's not, a false narrative. It really is. So is powerlifting, so is Olympic lifting. Anyone can start those sports at any level.
Well, I argue that with Olympic lifting.
Anyone can take a PVC pipe and start learning how to move.
But,
you know what I mean?
I really think Olympic lifting is for like real athletes. Like you need to have like I mean, I guess anyone could do lightweight, but I mean, to really advance in that sport and to move forward, I couldn't do it. I know I couldn't do it.
So I think, for one thing, Olympic lifting, the younger you start, the better, because it's a lot of the neuromuscular, the brain working with the muscles, and the neuromuscular system. So like the brain and the muscles, that's all very what we call plastic when you're young, meaning that you can create neural pathways. So when you do a movement, your brain and your muscles create this pathway. The more you do that movement, the stronger that pathway becomes, and that's where things become second nature.
Yeah.
So Olympic lifting, when we start kids there, we see them go on to do really well. Where as an adult, like I didn't pick it up till I was 30. My neuromuscular pathways for those lifts are never going to be as primed and as strong as someone who starts when they're younger. So it is definitely a high skill sport that way. And then I argue that a lot of adults don't need to do Olympic lifting. Like if unless you want to do Olympic lifting just purely because you want to do it, like there's no benefit of it that you can't get from doing other things like plyometrics and other things that can produce that power.
Yeah.
It's high power movement. So I don't think all adults should do Olympic lifting if they don't want to.
Yeah. I just think it's a sport for people that are good at it.
But you can't get good at it if you don't do it.
Yeah. Sometimes like I wish this was China and like I could go around and like you see someone, right, and you see their legs and like they're structured, and you're like,
I'm gonna take you, put you in a dungeon, and you're gonna Olympic lift.
Exactly. You're gonna Olympic lift. You're squatting. Just
you're a swimmer. You're gonna run marathons.
Yeah. Like a swimmer, like this really tall guy with like big lats, like going in the pool, There's so many people that have natural talent that don't have like the mental drive. Like it makes me crazy as a swimming coach.
Yeah.
I had zero talent. I had to fight for every inch in every sport. I'm not totally unathletic. And when I see people that just start off and are just better than me after years of training, and like they're just like don't show up to training, they just screw around, it drives me crazy.
Yeah, because there's natural talent, and then there's people without the natural talent, and the person without the natural talent will surpass the natural talent if they have the drive, and this person doesn't. This person has the drive, of course, they're going to stay ahead. So that's why you hate to see that natural talent go to waste, because there's no person with natural talent without drive who succeeds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They can make it a little ways on that talent. Yeah, I used to do the same thing. Like when I coached CrossFit, someone new would come in and would be talking, would be going through our intro, and be like, if it was a guy, it was typically, oh yeah, I have a background as a wrestler. And I was like, oh, cool. Well, you'll be beating me in the workouts in about 2 weeks. Let me show you the mechanics of how we do everything, and then you're going to just destroy me. And for the females, it was usually if they were a gymnast. It's like, okay, great. You're going to destroy me in a little while,
So, as a coach, was it easier to coach men or women?
Um, I don't know that I don't know that I really noticed much of a difference between men and women as far as coaching. Um, I think in general, like women might tend to be a little bit more open to suggestions because maybe their ego doesn't get as involved as with the guy, where sometimes the guys will be like, tell me what to do. You know what I mean? Um, and
Exactly.
then women tend to, honestly have a higher tolerance for pain. And so, I mean, some of that might just be from the ability to give birth. It's an
Yeah.
inherent thing in them. So, we used to joke, in CrossFit that like it was typically the women that would come join and then bring their husbands along. You know, that was a common thing where, the women would come and they can deal with the pain of the horrible workouts and they'd talk their husbands into coming. Um, Not that a lot of guys can't deal with pain, but
Exactly. My wife does the what do you the this foam rolling, or now that I know, now that I'm a scientist now, self myofascia,
myofascial release. Yeah, myofascia. Yeah,
fascia, myofascia.
yeah,
Uh, she does it with this hard one. It's a medieval torture device.
yeah.
And she just goes in, does it, and digs in. I'm like, oh, it, it's so painful for me to do, and she does it like it's nothing.
Yeah, my foam roller is actually just a PVC pipe from Home Depot. It's like one of the thick ones. Yeah, it's brutal. I mean, sometimes I have to like push off of it, so I'm just not laying on it too much. But um,
So the fascia, right?
yep,
Am I saying it right?
yep, fascia.
That's like it's surrounding the muscle, right?
Yeah, so the fascia is like it's like you have the muscle, and then the fascia is kind of it's a sheath that sits over the muscle. Um, and it kind of encapsulates muscles, and the fascia has it's not like you don't have just a fascia over each individual muscle. So there's like the fascia kind of has like patterns to it also. So like a fascia might extend from one muscle over another also.
Really?
And it's something I haven't studied a ton of, but there's a book, and I haven't like read all of it. I've looked at some of it, called Anatomy Trains,
Yeah.
and it's about like the fascia and the patterns that it makes through the body. And so like you'll have fascial patterns, so to speak, and that's you know why you can't always treat individual muscles, because sometimes muscles are kind of combined, and the fascia helps do that because the fascia will kind of like link muscles together in a way. And I'm not an expert on fascia, so I'm, you
Oh,
know,
but do you know, so what is the rolling doing? Like, cause like now, so you roll, right? You feel like a spot that hurts, and right, you sit into it for a little bit, and it does feel better, right? Like after you're done. Like, what's going on?
so some of that is just relieving tension, and foam rolling is, it's been shown to have some benefit, and then some research shows that it doesn't really have much benefit. But a lot of it is how you're doing it. So if you just roll across a muscle, you might not be doing a lot. You really want to find those points of like pain, and then you want to kind of sit there, and you want to try to release that tension. And it's sometimes it's not just fascia, but it's the actual muscle itself. Um, but what you're doing is relieving some of the tension that muscle's built up when you get like kind of knots. It's the same thing as like a deep tissue massage.
Right.
They get in there and they kind of relieve that tension. I don't know the specific like, what's actually going on inside of the muscle when that tension's being relieved. Um, but yeah, it's just relieving those pieces of tension. And I know, like for example, if you like roll out your quadriceps, like the front of the thighs, like that's super painful. Um, and I don't know if you're familiar with Kelly Starrett. He's real big into mobility. He wrote a book called The Supple Leopard. He was on CrossFit used to employ what they called subject matter experts. It was one of the things I thought CrossFit did really good is they said, hey, we're CrossFit, but we think this guy is amazing at powerlifting. This guy's amazing at this. Well, he was their mobility subject matter expert for a long time. They don't really use the same model they used before, but I did a seminar with him, and he would like step on your quads and just it'd be like painful when he's like, it's kind of like rolling them out, but he's stepping on them. But then he would say like, hey, lay your arm out, and he'd do the same thing on your bicep, and it's like it didn't hurt at all. And it's like he's stepping with the same pressure on the bicep as he was on the quad, and on the quad you're just like extreme pain. I started trying it out with myself with rolling, and it's like, yeah, the bicep doesn't hurt at all.
Yeah.
We don't walk on our biceps every day, all day. We don't, it's like we're using our quads so much that there's just this, this like level of hurt when you roll them that you don't get other places. It made me realize how much my quads need to be rolled out and stuff like that. But back to the research, I know like there's been research with foam rolling that shows that like you can improve some range of motion in the short term, but it doesn't stick. And then there's just a whole back and forth kind of with the research on foam rolling. But I think again, it comes down to you really got to hunt for those spots that are where you have the tension and try to relieve that tension. It's not just about rolling over all your muscles,
Yeah.
So I think it gets used wrong a lot.
That's why you see most people just rolling around on it.
Yeah. It's a good way to spend 10 minutes in the gym talking to your buddies, rolling around. You think you're doing something, but you really didn't do much. But
I did my IT bands yesterday, and they must have had. I never did it before.
Yeah, the IT bands can be. Yeah.
Man, like I was like in pain from holding myself up off of,
Yeah. Yeah.
In your gym, out your in what do you call it? Your garage.
Backyard gym.
Garage. Are you lifting pounds or kilos?
I use pounds currently because that's what my weight set is in. I've lifted in kilos before. Like I've been to gyms where it was all kilos, so I've lifted in kilos before. And then I went to one gym, it was a CrossFit gym, where all of their bumper plates were in kilos, but then all of their change plates were in pounds.
Yeah.
So you ended up with the weirdest lifts because you'd be like, okay, I got, 100 kilos on the bar. Now I'm going to add 5 pounds or 10 pounds or whatever, that one actually worked out to 225, 100 kilos plus 5 pounds. But, you'd end up with like 95 kilo, whatever it was. You'd end up with these weird numbers that didn't fit into your kilo or pound, scheme.
Yeah, I'm slowly trying to stop everyone from switching to kilos.
Yeah.
Nuts. Because I can't figure out when anyone's lifting. Yeah, and I'm not doing the math, so I don't care.
Right.
Tell me.
Yeah, I mean, pounds is, of course, I grew up in the US, so that's what I'm used to. When I lifted at gyms that did kilos, it was fine. I would never realize what I was lifting until I did the math, and I was like, oh, wow, I lifted that, but then you get used to it and it's no problem. But then
when I bust people's chops, like the overseas, they're just like, you guys just want to lift in pounds because it sounds like more weight. That's what they say.
No, I'm fine with that.
Well, you lifted, you said, in 100% raw, right?
I did a couple meets at 100% raw, yeah.
You have a lift?
I've never been a real strong like lifter. I mean, my all-time maxes were like, my deadlift was like 330 or 430. I mean, my squat was 330, and then my bench has never been over 215.
Listen, it doesn't, it doesn't really matter. I don't really care what your numbers are. What I care about is where you started, and you know what I mean, where you are now. That's the only thing that matters. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I enjoy the meets, just like I enjoy. For me, again, I've never been like elite in anything that I've done, but I always enjoy competing against myself. Right. And then I like the environments of the meets. I like the environments of a local 5K, a Spartan race, all those different things. I like those environments. So I like to go and compete in those environments. And then I always just gauge my progress against myself. When I actually started running ultras, what happened is I was running marathons, and I like killed myself trying to like get better. I was like a 4-hour marathoner, and I'm like, I did everything I could, like, perfect training program, blah, blah, blah. And like, I'd go to a race and like, this is going to be my race. And I'd set like a 5-minute PR to a 3:55, you know? And I'm like, okay, I just went from 4 hours to 3:55 and I killed myself in training. That's when I was like, but I can go farther. I may not be able to get faster.
Yeah, I mean, I was never like the best swimmer, but let me tell you, like in the 100 yards, like for a whole year, I was hunting to get under a minute in 100 yards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the whole team was, you know, they were all better than me. But when they seen the board go up 59, like everyone went crazy. And
Right.
the other team was like, this guy just came in last place. Like, what's everyone going crazy for? You know, but it's all about, you know, everyone knew I was trying to break it, you know, it's my you know. So it's
So this reminded me of a quick story here. So I used to do springboard diving for just a little bit.
Mhm.
And wasn't a good diver, but I had fun doing it. And I had this dive off the high board that was a 1.5 backflip with a half a twist.
Mhm.
However, when I did it, I didn't do it correctly. And my teammates all said I looked like a mannequin falling from an airplane. So like I would literally have my arms away from my body, my legs would be apart, my elbows and knees would be slightly bent, and I would flip and twist and then land, and I would complete the dive. Well, at competitions, they would tell everyone that we were competing against, like, wait till you see his falling mannequin. It's the best, right? So I'd do it. It was my last dive because it was the twist dive. I come up out of the water and like everyone's cheering, and the judges are just like, that was horrible. Why are people clapping and cheering? But it was like, even though it was horrible, everyone knew like that was my signature move, and they were so impressed.
You ever hit the board?
I didn't ever hit the board. I hit the water with my face twice so hard that my eyeballs hurt for like 3 days. The one time was actually when I was first learning the falling mannequin. I did the backflip, half twist, doing my second one and came straight face first from the high board. I had my arms out to the side, face first from the high board. The other time I was learning my double forward somersault off the low board, and I did the double forward, but I was still in tuck and kept rotating forward and just slapped my face right on the water. And both those times, like eyeballs hurt. And besides that, I had, you know, back flop off the high board, you know, but those were just stung, you know.
Yeah. You ever see the bubbler system for divers? I was at Georgetown. They had one. I was at St. Francis College, and we went down to Georgetown to compete. And I guess they had a lot more money than we did at St. Francis College. They had a big air compressor next to the pool. Hose would go down to the bottom underneath where the diving board was. The coach would be there with a button, and if he saw the diver was gonna, you know, flop on the water, he'd hit the button, bubbles would come up, and you would, like, there'd be like no surface tension, and like you would go,
Right.
like you would hit the bottom, like you would touch the bottom. You wouldn't like slam into the bottom, but like, yeah, you just like, it was a weird feeling, like going.
Yeah, that would be weird.
Yeah, but like you the nice thing about it is you had no fear
Right.
having a bad dive.
Yeah, that would have been nice. I dove for a community college in San Diego, so we had no bubbler system.
All right, so I'm gonna use your PhD for free right now. All
All
right.
right.
So my hips, right? I have a forward tilt, right? And
Okay.
anterior tilt to my hips. And a lot of times they'll hurt. And if I stretch my quads, that'll release it a little bit, I guess, right? Help it out. But what muscles do you think, like what, like, I've always been like that. Like since I was young, I remember my father always like hitting me, like, and being like, stand up straight, you know, like walk, you know, like straight. And like, cause I guess
Right.
I was forward like that, my hips, like why would I have that be, even as a child?
Well, I mean, things like that happen even as children. You get tight muscles or things like that, or you just develop, you know, unnatural patterns. The quads are definitely something to look at, and like you said, if it releases a little bit, that could be part of the problem. The psoas muscles, can also, like tight psoas muscles can also contribute to that.
I don't even know what that is.
So the psoas goes, I'm trying to think of where the actual insertions are. It goes like, it's a deep muscle that goes through and attaches to the spine. And then I'm trying to think of where it actually comes to on the other end. Can't remember offhand. But the psoas muscles, they are a hip flexor. And so sometimes those can affect the hips also. Problem with those is that they can like I've tried to like hit them with like a lacrosse ball or something, and they're deep muscles, so they're definitely hard to hit.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something to look into. Lots of times it is quads, or it's you can also, you know, your erector spinae in the back, if they're super tight, can cause a problem. So sometimes just stretching out that lower back will help too.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and you know, that's something I've struggled with, different like mobility issues, and you know, lots of times it's also like neuromuscular, so it's that brain, you know, tricking the muscle into not releasing. So sometimes it's not just the actual muscle fibers that need to be lengthened, but it's your body telling you to relax or whatever. You know, there's different you know, sensory organs in our body that create tension. So we have things that will create tension, and you know, there's like a thing called the Golgi tendon organ that's what stops us from getting injured. Where if there's too much tension on a muscle, it will just release the muscle, you know, and it'll stop it from contracting so much that it rips.
Right.
High level lifters can sometimes override that through mental training, which is why you'll see things like where someone just rips a muscle. They
Yeah.
probably were overriding that Golgi tendon organ. Also, like, you know, the woman who lifts a car off her kid, because you know, I mean, you hear about those crazy feats of strength. Well, their brain just overrode, you know, all the sensory organs that tell it can't do this. You know, but sometimes I think with mobility, and I haven't really, you know, I don't know if there's a ton of research on this, but I think a lot of times with mobility, it's that brain muscle connection that we're lacking.
Lifting, I guess I'm trying to incorporate a word for your training, right? Like your dedication to fitness.
Yep.
Has it helped you through life's toughest moments?
Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah. So for one thing, training is a mental release for me. Like getting that training time is it's just good for my mental state. Um, and then I think just learning to push yourself in a workout translates to the things that you face throughout the day and face throughout life. Um, I'm one of those people, like I've overcome a lot in my life. I've dealt with addiction, I've dealt with homelessness, you know, all different kinds of things. And I'm not one that can say like, oh, exercise saved me, because I did, you know, I've always been kind of active and into exercise even when I was an addict. I didn't have a regular training program, you know, but I was always into that stuff. And when I got out of that stuff, it wasn't like I used exercise as the way of getting out of that stuff, but it definitely helps me in my day-to-day life because it gives me an outlet. You know, like I mentioned before, I just have an addictive personality in a sense. Like when I do something, I'm all in. When I was younger, that was drugs and alcohol. Now it's exercise and training. You know, when I was in college, it was going straight to a PhD. I've always had that kind of all-in mentality, and exercise is a good outlet for that.
Yeah, maybe we're all similar in that sense because at one point I was like not into lifting and I was into drinking
Yeah,
and when I you know made the decision to not drink, it was almost like the same mental focus, like to you know to not do it.
yeah, yeah. I think that's something that we see a lot with, you know, a lot of people in the fitness world do have that kind of that mentality, and that's why I think you find a lot of people in the fitness world that did have addiction problems before, because a lot of us are driven and focused, whether it's on the good things or the negative things. You know, when I was an addict, I was going to be the best damn addict I could be. You know.
I- yeah,
That's not a good thing, but it's
well, it makes sense. I get it. I was going down that road. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I did have help. I mean, like went to like a recovery program. It wasn't AA. It's called Celebrate Recovery. It's just like,
Yep, I know, I'm familiar with it. I have some a cousin and her husband actually run a Celebrate Recovery at their church.
yeah, it's like AA but for everything. You know,
Right,
it's like basically AA for everything, and instead of like just a higher power of your choice, it's like it's Jesus. You know, it's
right.
basically like
Yep.
AA, but it's Jesus is your higher power, and you can go for like any issue you want. But I think it's great.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, when I mean I stopped my like addictions at different points. Like alcohol was the longest one I did. When I was younger, like when I was a teenager, young adult, I was doing a lot of drugs and stuff and stopped those earlier on. And then the alcohol I maintained, I was still drinking up until about 4 years ago. And I was actually in my PhD when I stopped drinking. Yeah, I just had my second kid and I ended up getting a DUI and crashed my truck into a pole, got a DUI, and I was just like, if I want to see my kids grow up and it not be from like a prison waiting room or visiting room, like I need to stop drinking because I could have ran into somebody and killed them and gone to prison.
yeah.
And for me, that was like the final straw. So I'm like, okay, now I'm done with everything. And I'd been off of everything except for alcohol for quite a long time at that point. But I would still drink, and I wasn't an everyday drinker at that point, but I was an every week drinker, and I didn't know how to stop once I started. So, but I didn't actually use any recovery programs except I did see a counselor. Like at first, it was once a week, and then I went to once a month after a couple months because I was in college and they had like a health center that I could go see the counselor for free. So I'm like, this is right here. I work here. I go to school here, and counselor's right here. So it just made sense. And um, so yeah, it definitely helped.
Yeah, yeah. I I use like every resource like available. You know,
Yeah,
that's like I was already seeing a therapist anyway. I have bipolar disorder, and so
yeah,
seeing one anyway. You know, and like the doctor was like, oh, my psychiatrist was like, yeah, you could have like a drink. That was to me it was like you could drink,
yeah,
but
yeah. I did a class that yeah, I had to take after getting a DUI. I have to take a class like for drinking and stuff. And this class, it like talked all about like how to responsibly drink, and it was like we spent like a whole day, and it was like this is how you drink responsibly. And then it got to a point where it was like, however, if you have this issue or this issue or this issue, you can't drink responsibly. And I was like, well, that just explained me to a T. So
yeah, yeah. If you have like manic episodes, yeah, you can't be, you don't do it.
yeah. Yeah, and I have the whole, family history of alcoholism. There's no chance for me to be a social drinker, responsible drinker, so I just don't drink.
All right. Out of all the different sports you've been around, which one do you think the athletes are the friendliest?
Um, I honestly don't. I don't know that I'd really say anyone has seemed like more friendly than the other.
Yeah.
I think in every sport, if you're around enough of the athletes, that there's always going to be a couple that are not the friendliest, but for the most part, like all the athletes I've been around have been really friendly. Um, you know, the it's also a little hard because I'd say like in running, I was around a lot more people when I was into the running because I got into the running community, and I also was working for several years where I was like helping out race directors and doing timing for races, and so I just was a lot deeper in that community. But they were some of the best people, the running community. The powerlifting community was always really really friendly at the meets and stuff like that. I'd say the powerlifting community maybe comes off a little bit more rough around the edges,
Yeah.
but so it might be a little more off-putting to some people. But they were even rough around the edges. To me, they were always friendly and nice and everything. I mean, my wife did a couple powerlifting meets, and she always had great support and everything like that. Um, yeah, the CrossFit community has been really nice and friendly. The Spartan community, as much as I've seen, has been really good. I can't really say that one would be more friendly than the other.
Yeah.
I think anytime you get into a community like that, for the most part, people are they're there to support each other and what they're doing. What about you? Have you noticed any differences?
I find that powerlifting has been pretty good. I have been very good, but I mean, powerlifting is strange in that it's almost like, 8 different sports, because you have raw, the raw classic, you have single ply suits, you got
Right.
canvas suits, or you got drug tested, then you have undrug tested. So it's like, and if you go undrug tested and drug tested, now you're up to like almost 10 different sports, really. I mean, that's the way I
Right.
look at it. It's so different. And I really haven't been around the whole equipped part of powerlifting,
Yeah.
so I really don't know much about that. I've been around raw lifting since 2001, back when there was before 100% raw, there was the Anti-Drug Athletes United. I used to live there, and everyone's been everyone's been good. And but I've talked to a few strongman competitors who they usually wind up doing powerlifting too. And
Yeah.
they say that powerlifting, the strongman community is the friendliest they've ever seen.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, even guys, strongmen that competed in different sports in high school and they did powerlifting, because they say that, they'll say even the guys you're competing against, they will be cheering you on like for legit, like when you're going. And
Right.
in powerlifting, when you're competing against someone, at least I know when I'm coaching people or my wife is, or I see, everyone's just looking to see what number did he do, what number did she do, what I
Right.
mean? Well, we got to do 10 pounds more, we got to do, it's everyone's like calculating. And they say in strongman, no one's even doing that. No one's even, well, but no
Yeah.
one's even doing that. So I really want to go and do one day. I'd really like to. I'd be the littlest strongman ever.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I had a buddy that did strongman for a while. He was pretty good at it, but yeah, I've never been part of that community really, so to speak.
what's your view on steroids?
Um, so I'm as far as steroids go, like, I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. At high levels are they're going to negatively affect your health. Um, but again, if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. I think steroids, I have nothing against someone doing them. I'm against people doing them and then competing in sports that aren't supposed to have them.
Yeah.
So obviously that's cheating. But if you want to do steroids just because you want to get jacked or you want to be stronger and you're just doing it for that, that's fine. Or if you're in a sport where it's allowed, like if you're a competitive bodybuilder or a untested power lifter or whatever, in a organization that's kind of expected. I have nothing against it because I'm not one of those people that really cares what other people do as long as it's not affecting me or not affecting the community in general, so to speak. I think steroids in lower doses are actually hugely beneficial to people. And they have like longevity benefits that could be great. But it's not not why most people use them. Most people use them just to get big or strong or whatever for their sport. But yeah, I mean, as long as you're not doing it and then using it in a cheating method, I mean, I don't really care. I mean, myself, it's not something that I don't care that much about being strong to put myself through the possible physical damage it could do to me, to use large amounts. I don't know, who knows? I wouldn't say that I would never use like smaller amounts. As I get older, if my testosterone levels are really low or something, I don't know, like, the replacement therapy. Um, but yeah, it's nothing I'm necessarily, I don't think they're as bad as some people make them out to be, unless you get into the heavy amounts.
Yeah, like I not grew up, when I was in college and got into lifting, like, um, basically, like, we were training and it was like anyone who does steroids is the devil, and anyone who lifts equipped is a cheater. And you were just like so focused. We were just like in like this small world in the 80s,
Right,
like just like this was back when like we started raw lifting when it really wasn't a thing back in 2001. Really,
right.
like I remember we went to a USAPL meet. We just happened to go once, and we lifted raw. And this was before they had raw in USAPL, and they were like, "What are you doing? like,
Right.
like you're gonna explode if you lift like that. You have to put a polyester suit on." And we were just like, "Nope." And it just had because we wanted to compete against other colleges, and yeah, we did well. I think we beat Army. Some other college was there, and we did it raw.
Yeah.
Good time. Yeah, college was the best. We had a great time. We had a team of 30 people. About it was probably like one of the best times ever. Like
Yeah. Yeah,
so
that'd be cool.
fun. Yeah. It met like 30 like kids powerlifting in college, like running around like the hallway and like in the whole
Yeah.
just causing chaos. It was awesome.
Yeah, when I did my first raw meet, I was in grad school, I was in my master's, and it was me and a couple other master's students that like did it together, and then my wife did it with us. But it was kind of cool because like, we were all in our master's program together, and we, being in biomechanics, exercise science, you're always in like the physical education building. So like our gym was right there. So we'd like work out together at work. We'd go into the lab during the day, and then we'd just take our lunch break and go down and hit our lifts or meet before work or whatever. So it was kind of cool, that camaraderie and stuff. We didn't have 30 of us, but
How it was so sad when it was over.
what's that? Oh, you're so sad when it was over. Yeah.
It was over when we graduated and it was done. It was so depressing.
Yeah.
So depressing. You met your wife in college lifting?
No, I met my wife before I went to college. So I actually met her just in my hometown through a mutual friend. And then we had been together about 2 years. I've been working at a factory. It was a Tyson pig factory, and worked there for a couple of years. And I was like, I really got to get out of this job. That's when I decided to go back to college. So I didn't go back to college till I was 30, and then I went 11 straight years to get my PhD. So I met her. I started back to college, and then I did my first couple years, year and a half, I did it at a community college. Then I took a semester off, got married, did our honeymoon, and then started at the university. Did 2 years at the university, then went straight into grad school. So we moved. I'm from Iowa originally. That's where I met my wife at. Then we moved to Omaha, which was only about 4 hours away, and did grad school there. And then moved down here after grad school. So I did from 30 to 41 was straight college for me. I'll be 44 this summer. So
That's tough. That starting in your 30s.
yeah,
Too.
yeah, it really was. It gave me some advantages because I had already experienced life to the fullest. I had had all the types of jobs. I worked in retail, I worked in factories, I worked in telemarketing, everything you can think of. So I had a lot of life experience. So it made college a different kind of experience. I think it helped a lot. I was a lot more serious about college. I did some schooling when I was like 19, when I was on the diving team out in San Diego. But I just wasn't that invested in the education part. I was more about just having fun back then.
Yeah, for me with this whole personal training thing, like I'm on like a total career change because I was in the NYPD for 13 years. I was a sergeant, and
Yeah.
You know, one day they, they do random drug tests, and you put down the medication you're on. I'm like, all right, lithium, Klonopin, all this stuff, and
Right.
I didn't realize that this was all a problem. And
Right.
then
Well,
this,
so these are all things you're on, like,
uh,
because you're like you're bipolar and stuff like that, and then
yeah,
like
because
they didn't know about it.
yeah, I had no idea because I started going to a therapist, and
Right.
he was like, I think you should see a psychiatrist, and he's like, he thinks I have bipolar disorder. So anyway, so I put down all of my medication, and I give it to they take it to drug test, and anyway, like a couple days later, I guess they did for them to register it. They were like, you got to go to psychological services, and so I go down there, and they're like, why are you taking this medication? I'm like, well, I needed to sleep, which was true. Is why I needed the
Yeah.
Klonopin to sleep, and the Seroquel, and they were like, we need to talk to your psychiatrist because like that's a lot of Seroquel just for
Yeah.
go to sleep. And so they call my psychiatrist, and he's like, oh yeah, he's got bipolar disorder. And they were like, all right, well, we need your gun and your shield. And
Oh wow.
yeah, yeah,
Just like that, huh?
yeah, it's like that. And then it was a whole year long a process. And they were like, yeah, well, they had their psychologists declared, they said I had bipolar this one disorder. And then it had to go to, they recommended to New York City that I get put out with a pension, and then the city, well, the city basically, they looked at all the documents, but then they interview you. And most of the cops that get interviewed are people looking to go out on like on a pension on purpose, like they're playing
Right.
the game,
Yeah.
and so they asked me a few basic questions. I answered them, and then they asked, well, has the bipolar disorder affected your work? And I was like, well, I really can't answer those questions, but just for legal reasons. It's like I can't,
Right.
like I can't. I gotta refuse to answer that question. It's like like it's like I can't tell you this stuff. And they were like, "What do you mean?" Like it looked like no one ever answered that question like that. And I was like, listen, I did some stupid things. I was like, I can't tell you about them. I was like, maybe I don't know in 20 years or so, if you want,
Yeah.
I'll answer them. Some really good stories and stupid stuff. But I was like, I can't tell you that right now. And they were like, okay. And so that was like, okay, this guy's crazy. Snap. Like that was it. I was out. So
Did you get your pension though?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
50%.
Yeah.
So now I gotta do something else. But that
Yeah.
was like a year and a half ago. I was working with my father doing construction, but I can't really work with family.
Right.
So, well, I'll see. Either this personal training thing or teaching people to ride motorcycles. I'd really like to do that this summer.
Yeah.
But up here, it's only a summer job. Down in Florida, it's probably a
Yeah.
year-round thing.
Yeah. We can do everything year round here.
Yeah.
It's funny though, our seasons are kind of just shifted though, because our summers here are so hot. Because I'm in South Florida, so we're not far from like Miami, Fort Lauderdale,
Yeah.
West Palm. We're all part of South Florida. Um, we're so hot in the summer here. Like if you look up like running races, they're all in the winter, and then there's nothing in the summer.
Yeah.
Or like our farmers market starts up in the fall, goes through the winter, and then shuts down in the spring.
So many people probably leave, right, for the summer.
Well, yeah, we also have all the snowbirds that come. We get a lot of the New Yorkers on the East Coast here, so we get a lot of people here.
It's weird. Like I've driven to Florida so many times, and like it's like as you go down, it's like you're going down into the South, and then once you get into Florida, it's almost like you're back into New York again.
Yeah, so where I'm at, I've heard this and I think it's perfect. Is South Florida, they say, is the North Caribbean because we have so many people from the Caribbean here. And then the further north you go, the further south you get.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
as you travel north from here, you start getting into the deep south of the US.
Right.
You know what I mean? But we're far enough down that we've gotten into they call the North Caribbean, but it's a lot more like, a lot more diversity here. And it's not like the deep south, either you go inland or north and you get that, but I'm right by the coast. I'm like 2 miles from the coast. So I'm definitely, close to the ocean. When we bought a house, we decided we don't want to go inland at all. We want to stay right by the ocean so I can come home from work at night, take the boys to the beach if I want. Not a big deal.
That's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
So what are your goals with the lifting and for your career?
With my personal stuff, my goal is just to maintain good health into my old age. I mean, like I have a couple of clients I work with at the outdoor facility I train at that are like in there. Like we have a lady that's 75 that just had a hip replacement. She was lifting weights like 2 weeks after her hip replacement, and she's basically back to where she was. I mean, seeing her is like, I want to be that person when I'm 75, still lifting weights, still, able to do all the things I want to do. Especially having young kids, being, getting to my mid 40s, I'm going to be 50 years old when my oldest kid becomes a teenager. Yeah, I mean, so I want to maintain my fitness for sure through my 50s and 60s to keep up with my kids, and then just have fun. So I love doing I just love lifting and running and all that stuff. That's part of the reason I got into I think the Spartan races are a lot of fun because the Spartan brand, they have some actually difficult events. So in your race, you have a 400-pound tire flip. So that's something that, it's a strong lift. You have to do it twice. You have an Atlas stone carry, some difficult stuff. So I like that because I used to joke when I'd run marathons, I'd do a 4-hour marathon, then I'd get done. I was like, I bet I could still deadlift more than anybody here right now, though. You know what I mean? Just Spartan kind of, to me, it's a little more fun because it mixes that endurance along with the strength. So just having fun is gonna, is a main goal with my training and everything. As far as career goes, that's, I think long term, I think the fitness industry is where I want to leverage myself, and I think, running a fitness business, and what exactly that's going to look like is a little unclear now. Training, will be a part of it. I'd like to have my own gym. I don't necessarily want to be on the floor doing the training all the time. Long-term goal would be to own a gym where I can create the environment, have people that are doing the training, work on the programming. Then I really like, event production. So like I said before, I used to do some race directing, timing type work. And I wouldn't mind possibly getting into the field of putting on obstacle race events, or even things in the powerlifting strongman type of realm, but mixing them, I guess obstacle course racing is mixing those up, Atlas stones, tire flips, and then running. But it's possible going into the event production side of things also. But yeah, the career, again, like I mentioned earlier, I think, setting goals, but then being open to the shifting of course is very important. And I think right now I'm kind of in a position where I'm kind of in not a limbo period, but a transition period, because of my current job of doing clinical research is kind of up in the air, and I'm really getting into going down the path of the fitness industry that I see myself heading that way. What that is actually going to look like, I don't have the solid concrete plans at this point, but I think being a gym owner, and with that, one of my ideas with the gym is having it be a indoor outdoor facility, but with the outdoor capabilities of doing everything outdoors. With the way COVID affected everything, I work at an outdoor training facility, and man, we have been in a great position. As soon as things open back up, we were the first people to be able to open back up because we're outdoors. Our summers are brutal. Yeah, we have an 8 o'clock in the morning class and a 5 in the evening class that just in the summer, I mean, it is hot at those classes. but people seem to enjoy it. It's so you just have to put your expectations a little lower when it's that hot out. But yeah, so I think as far as like gym ownership, I definitely leaning towards more of an outdoor facility with indoor capabilities, but have it primarily be based around the outdoor concept. Being from the Midwest, I also like the fact that we can train outdoors year round.
Well, it's been real awesome talking to you.
Yeah, it was good talking to you also.
What's your Instagram name?
So my Instagram is Dr. Troy fit at Dr. Troy Fit.
And I'm sure if anybody hits you up on Instagram, you'd give them a little help.
Yeah. If anyone wants to contact me, you can get me there. Yeah, and I'm always happy to talk to people and everything. So,
Hey, if you, when you're gonna host a competition or whatever, just give me a shout out and let me know.
yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll let you know.
Down there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I have in the works. I have a couple of ideas for events. We're probably looking a couple years out before I'd have anything solid yet, but hopefully the COVID protocols are a little better by that point.
If you combine like alligators into your competition, be a home run. Everyone
I
will.
mean, and that's got that Florida feel, right? So I'm really bringing it home for Florida, the alligator.
I think so. All right, well,
I'll keep that in mind.
thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much for helping me out with some of my muscular issues, or skeletal issues, and talking about the strict curl. It was really a lot of fun. And,
Yeah, it was. It's good talking to you.
Good talking to you. Have a good day.
All right, you too.